What is up, 3 Point Stance Podcast? I am your co-host, Mike DeVito, here with Aaron Action Jackson and Sterling Pingree. And today we have my good friend, my brother, Jay Feely, 14-year veteran NFL kicker, one of the best to ever play the game, Pro Bowler, played with a number of teams, the Cardinals, the Falcons. He was there with me for a number of years with the Jets. Just a great leader, a great person. Right now doing stuff with CBS. You've seen him last weekend at the Chiefs game on the sideline, giving some special teams insight. One of the best commentators out there. I mean, Jay's such an incredible talent, both on and off the field. And so we're so excited to have him on. We have an incredible combo, really wide-ranging convo. Talk about locker room dynamics, politics, what's wrong with the world, how do we fix it, and then all of the stuff that Jay's doing, charitable stuff that Jay's doing with him and his family. I mean, some of the stories that he tells us about the causes that he's involved in are incredible. Then we spend 5 good minutes on the NFL playoffs, recapping the games for this past weekend, specifically Kansas City and Houston, the incredible comeback, and the type of player that Pat Mahomes is and what impresses Jay so much about him. And then we move on to this week's games, talking about the championship games, Green Bay and 49ers, and Kansas City and Tennessee, and we go over some of the specifics of that game. You're going to love it. You guys are going to really enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. And welcome, everyone, to 3 Point Stance. I am your co-host, Mike DeVito, here with Sterling Pingree, and we are down one. Aaron Jackson not here today, but we got an incredible guest who I've already introduced, but I do want to talk about Jay Feely a little bit, because one of the interesting things about being on a football team is normally the kickers and the punters and the special team guys aren't the guys that you look at as leaders, right? You're not looking at the kicker as like, you know, that's our guy who's going to rah-rah and get us fired up and going. And nothing against kickers, but it's just not normally the guy. But I remember 2008, 2009 when I'm in the Jets playing with Jay Feely. Jay was really one of those guys on a team, on that Jets team, and on a team that had a lot of great leaders. And Jay's somebody I look up to and respect and have a ton of respect for. And I'm really, really grateful to have you on the podcast. Jay, how's everything going? How's the family doing? How you been?
I'm good, Mike. It's great to be on here with you. You know, when you finish up your career, you look back, there's certain people that stand out to you, because of the kind of people they are. And Mike DeVito certainly was one of those guys, one of the best men I was ever around. And I always say a guy who got more out of his ability than anybody else, and that's not a knock in any way. It's very much a compliment. He worked as hard as he could. He developed himself as much as he possibly could. He got every ounce of ability out of himself. And I think, at the end of the day, when you're done with your career, those are the guys who can move forward and have contentment because they know that I left it all out there. Like I gave everything I had. It helps you not to live in the rearview mirror. And you see so many people in all walks of life, but they live in that rearview mirror looking back, wondering what if. And Mike, I got to think you're one of those guys, you don't ever think about what if because you left it all out there.
Jay, that means so much coming from you. And I want to ask you the same question because, honestly, that's something that I've struggled with in retirement is looking back and saying, man, could I have done better? Could I have, put more out there? Could I have been better? Maybe I could have done extra film study or worked harder. So to hear you say that really, really is an honor, and it means a ton. Now talk about your career, Jay, before we get into the games. I'm just curious how you've looked back at the game, because obviously Pro Bowl, all the stuff that you've done, one of the best kickers to ever play the game, and talk about somebody that respected Sterling. Every locker room Jay was in, and I know talking to coaches and players how respected you are. When you look back at any regrets, because you played it at the highest level, right? I mean, you played it with the best. So
I absolutely love my career. I love the game of football. I'm so grateful for everything it did for me and my family. The thing I miss the most, Mike, is the locker room. Is being with guys one-on-one every day, hanging out, laughing, joking, sweating, crying. I mean, just everything that you do throughout a season, giving everything you have, trying to get this collective group of 53 individuals to come together as a team and get to a point where they're willing to sacrifice for each other. They're willing to give up individual glory for the greater good of the team. And, I think, that's when it's really special, and you just miss those relationships. You miss the going out to dinner, hanging out, playing golf with those guys. And when you're done, it's over with, and you try to fill it with other things and new challenges and new relationships, and those can be incredibly rewarding and sometimes even more so. But there's a part of you that dies when you're done playing, and you have to say goodbye to that. You have to be okay with that, and it's just such a unique ride, Mike, and you and I shared that together, and going through it and being in that locker room. There's nowhere else like it, because you have guys from every different socioeconomic status, rich, poor, black, white, all over the spectrum, and you come together, and it's the only place I've ever seen this in my life where race isn't the most identifying factor. You're not a black football player or a white football player. When you get a locker room, you're just a New York Jet or whatever team that is you play for. And I think it's really special, and it's unique because it breaks down a lot of those racial walls, and it lets you realize and understand people and relationships, and have relationships that are unique that you wouldn't have anywhere else in the country.
Oh, Jay, you hit the nail on the head. And I look at, not to skirt off into politics too much, but I do want to hit it because I know you've done a lot with politics, and you're incredibly well informed and kind of breaking the mold of that stereotype, dumb jock football player. But you bring up the point about the locker room, and it's cliche, but it's so true. I mean, there's no replicating it. And yet I remember being in that locker room and having a lot of those difficult conversations that you see the rest of the world trying to have right now. And it's incredibly, emotional and charged and heated. And it almost feels like you have two teams going against each other, right? I mean, you got two teams that are just trying to beat each other. There's no end goal. Whereas like in the locker room, I feel like we were able to have those conversations a lot more productively, because at the end of the day, we were working towards a goal together. I mean, we did have a goal. We were coming together as a team for a purpose. And I feel like that's what's missing in the world today. I think like Democrat, Republican, whatever, right, left, center, we're missing the point that this is one team trying to attain one goal, and it really has become two or three teams trying to beat each other. Do you see it like? I mean, I know this is kind of off topic.
You're so right, and I think it's because at the core, we were brothers and we loved each other. And brothers can fight and they can disagree, they can rip on each other and give each other a hard time, and you certainly had that in the locker room, right? Which was what made it great, and it was special. And if you did something, everyone was going to get on you, and they were going to bust your shots. And if you did something in the media, they were going to post it up everywhere. It was just the best. But because you knew the guys loved you, you were able to go through that and not take it personally. I think in our country and politics, we get so disengaged from everybody, even our neighbors. Like, how many of your neighbors do you actually know? You can live there forever and you really don't know anybody. And we're in our own worlds, and we're consumed with social media, and we stay in our own houses and our own bubbles. And so because you don't know people say something and you take it personally. Right. People make a joke and you take it, as an affront to who you are as a man or a woman. And, or you hear something and you take it in the most negative connotation that you can. Whereas in a locker room, you don't do that at all. Somebody can say the most, critical thing about you, or an awful statement that in the public they'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody said that. That's horrible. Right. And in a locker room, you laugh and you joke about it, and you're like, oh, that's me. You got me. Right. And I think it was just so much more real because of that. One of the things I did early on in my career, which I would tell everybody to do this, who are playing, and I was so glad I did it, was I tried to get outside of my comfort zone, especially in training camp, and we get to choose who we room with in training camp. And I roomed with LeVar Arrington one time when I was with the Giants, and Brandon Short, like two of the biggest, baddest, blackest dudes, right? Two tough, mean linebackers from Penn State. Here's this, little white kicker rooming with them, and we set up every night, playing dominoes. They taught me how to play dominoes, and we're playing chess, and we're talking about politics, and they're telling me stories about, how they grew up and what they went through and their own experiences. And it gives a different context and connotation to then their own beliefs. And it helps you to understand somebody and why they believe what they believe. And we were able to kind of walk through that together. And I think just in general in our country, we don't do that. We don't hear people's stories. We don't hear where they came from. And then we don't understand their beliefs based on what they've experienced.
And it's incredibly convicting, right? I mean, I still catch myself doing that. Especially, and the further I'm out of the NFL, the more, like you said, it's hard to cultivate those kind of relationships that you had, right? The locker room,
Yeah.
it's cliche, but it's so true. That's what you miss the most. And it's really hard to make those kind of relationships. And what I've noticed is I get triggered, on some of the topics that I never would have in the locker room,
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's like, wait, where am I at? And I think back to those times where I had those same conversations. I remember we had a group of, like, kind of a book club thing my last year in Kansas City with Hussein Abdullah, who was a defensive back. We had him on the podcast, really incredible defensive back, and who was a Muslim. And then we had two other guys who worked with the Kansas City Chiefs staff. One was a Muslim, the other was an atheist, right? Three black guys, I'm the white guy, and we would get together every day. I mean, we would spend a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour in an office just talking politics and religion. Right, and if you think about, you can't get any polar opposite than those guys.
You got Muslims, you got Christians, you got atheists, you got white, you got black, you got everything in that group. But you guys were able to talk freely, right?
Talk freely, and you're right. You bring up a great point. If anybody were to hear the conversation, like I recently went back to school, and I know when I'm sending emails to my teachers or I'm dialoguing, I know, don't make the jokes, don't say the things that you said in the locker room, because you will get expelled, right? Like, don't. But in the locker room, totally different context. So, take digs at each other, and so no, you're totally right. I mean, this is totally off track, Sterling. I'm sorry. Well, we can veer it back into the game, but
I'm way better than football, though. Anyway,
tell me about it, Jay. You ain't kidding. Yeah, and well, real quick, so. You've done political commentary along with your sports commentary, and I'll tell you, you're one of the best sports commentators out there. I'm so glad CBS has you, because to get that special teams insight on the field really is unique and really brings a lot of flavor to the game. But I've also seen you do some political commentating as well. So can you just real quick, Jay, talk about your time doing the political stuff and your interest there, your involvement? I don't know. That's kind of a broad question, but just kind of.
Well, so I've done a lot less now, Mike. Actually, as I took a job with CBS and started working with them and started doing the NFL broadcast, and became an analyst up in the booth for them, doing games, and then you have to understand the bigger picture, right? And like I said, at the beginning, we were talking about on a team, when you're together, sometimes you have to put yourself aside for the greater good. And I've kind of had to do that a little bit with CBS. Like they don't necessarily want their analysts to be out, going on to CNN and Fox News and the different channels and getting put in a situation where you're going to have to take these stances on political issues. I love it. And at home, I'm like, my kids and my wife are probably sick of it, because I can't do it. I can't do it publicly as much anymore. So I do it at home with them. But, politics in general, I can say this. I've been disengaged in it a bunch because I hate the direction we're going, because it becomes so polarized, and everything we do is not about the greater good. I think when you look at politics, I understand you have two parties that are trying to beat each other, but at the end of the day, the one party is the United States of America, and trying to do what's best for everybody and trying to create an environment where everybody can succeed. That's the goal and desire, and so when I get involved in different groups here in Arizona, especially, or even globally, and we're trying to go out and we're trying to have an impact on people, because that's what I want my life to be. I want my life at the end to be full of opportunities where I was able to impact people's lives, whether that's using sports media or that's going out. We got involved in a group here in Arizona called House of Refuge, which is 88 homes for single homeless mothers and their kids. And you take them in. And the thing I love about it, Mike, is that it's an 18-month process. They go through everything, break down all the reasons why they got into a situation where they're homeless. They start to then build them back up, and they do drug testing, try and get them off of any drugs and anything that could hinder them going forward. They give them somebody to walk through how to get employed and how to keep a job, and they do that counseling, and then they do job training for them, and they walk them through parental techniques as well and how to be a better parent, and just the totality of it. And they have a 90% success rate of taking somebody who's homeless and can't sustain themselves, and then going out, having a job, and being self-sufficient. I love that. That speaks to me. You're helping people, but you're giving them an opportunity. They're doing the work, and then they're reaping the benefit for it. And when I look at our country and I look at politics, that's what we should do. We should look for ways that we can help people. We can give them an opportunity, and then they have to do the work to go and to be a success themselves.
Right.
It can't just be handing things out. It has to be somebody taking ownership of it and going out there and trying to change it. But what you should do is you should try to help in any way you can. I mean, we had a kid that we took in from Haiti 5 years ago, and I went down there after the earthquake, which was 10 years ago, which is crazy. It's been that long, but he was our translator and just this unbelievable kid. His name is Delmont. And, after a couple of years of going down to Haiti, kind of fell in love with this kid, found out that he had been homeless for 3 years. Their home got destroyed in the earthquake, had never said anything, would go on these building projects and build other people homes, and work as a translator, and then go home and sleep on roofs or wherever he could find somewhere to sleep because their home got destroyed. And, finally, the group we work with down there, they built his family a home, so they had a home. But his goal was to go to college and to get an education and, to be a success business-wise, to go back and transform his country and help his family. And so we sat down one night in Haiti, and he was telling me, walking through all his goals and talking about it. And, here's a kid who literally had nothing. And if he got one meal of rice and beans, I don't know if you've ever gone and done like a feeding project, like Feed My Starving Children or anything like that. But, they have these projects. We do a couple of them here with our school, and you go in, you take this rice, beans, and sorghum, you put it all together into these plastic bags and vacuum seal them, and then you ship them off, right? And you kind of feel good after like 2 hours. You did your job. Okay, I helped, and you go home to your life. But I'm down in Haiti, and we're bringing these things to this village exactly from Feed My Starving Children and giving them this packet, and that's their life-sustaining food. That's the only thing they're going to eat all day. And if they get that, they're grateful that they actually had something to eat that day. And so that's how this young man, Delmont, that's how he and his family survived forever. And, I sat down with him and heard his story. He would get up at 4 a.m. and go climb this mountain and run and train and pray and just ask God to help provide somebody to help change his life, right? And then he would go to school, and then after school, he would go work as his translator, and he was the sole provider for his family. And here he is at 16 years old doing all this. And just trusting that, God's going to provide, even in the most bleak situation you could ever imagine down in Haiti, and not having any food, not having shelter, being homeless for years. So I said, okay, you know what, Delmont? I said, we're going to get it done. We're going to find a way, and we're going to get you into school. And it took 2 years to get a visa. And not once did I ever hear him get frustrated, upset. He was just always happy, excited. We finally got the visa. Got it approved. I flew down there to Haiti to pick him up. And it was one of the coolest and one of the saddest things I've ever done in my life. I go into his little hut, and there's his mom, and now he's 18 years old. He's been the sole provider for his family since he was like 12. And so we had to kind of find a way to be able to provide for his family. And he was on a good month, he would make $200 a month, and that would provide for their whole family. So we're able to, through our foundation, say, okay, we'll give your family $200 a month so you can go to college. Well, I pick him up. We get on a plane. He's never been on a plane in his life. Hardly had any food other than rice and beans. So we fly over his village. We see his house as we leave Haiti. We're just crazy, in the plane. And now we land in Miami, and then I take him to Phoenix. And I mean, every food he has is, have you ever had blueberries? No. Have you ever had raspberries, strawberries, yogurt, whatever it was, first time ever. Huh. And so he moves in with my family. He's now got a college degree. Here's a guy, and whenever my kids or anybody else, I hear them complain about how hard school is or whatever, I'm like, listen, Delmont came here and didn't speak English. It was his second language, grew up going to school in the slums of Haiti, and he finds a way to graduate college with a 3.3 GPA. Oh my. If he can do it, you can do it. Go find a way and stop making excuses and go get tutoring help or go talk to the teacher or go find a to help you out. Like, there's no excuses. We find all these excuses to not be successful in life. Well, here's a kid who had nothing, was just so grateful for opportunity that wasn't going to be denied. And he's such a great example. And so this is a lot, and we went a totally different tangent on you.
No, keep going, Jay. Keep going, Jay.
The whole reason I told this story is because, when you come to politics in our country, it's about giving opportunity. I didn't do anything special for Delmont other than say, you know what? I'm going to be that conduit for you. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to help you get your visa. I'm going to give you an opportunity in school. And then I basically told him, man to man, like, okay, Delmont, you've never had a dad. I had to go through all the talks with him before he's going to college. But I'm like, this is your opportunity right now. You need to take advantage of it, and you need to go out there, and no matter how hard it is, and no matter, what stumbling blocks you run into, you got to find a way to get over it. And he did. And he took advantage. And now he's working full time. He's getting married. He's got a great job here. He took over all of his funding for his family. He's providing for his family. It's just such a great story. That's what we should do as a country. That's what politics should be about. Let's find a way to give people opportunity, to allow them to take ownership of their own life, and at the end of the day, they have to do it though. You can't make them, you can't force them, and you can't, really fix all the problems for people who don't want to take those necessary steps themselves.
Let's get this story on here real quick, because I did the homeless, the soup kitchen when I was with the Jets. You were there. Mm-hmm. I think you might have went with me one time, but I did it 5 years there when we were out in New Jersey.
That's awesome.
And every year, here's the thing. Every year I went, it was the same people. And I remember talking to Jesse, the community relations guy, and saying, Jesse, this is year 5. This is the people that were here 5 years ago. This is the same 100 people. Why is there no? And they were trying to do the things that you were talking about with the homeless shelter, but I need to get that blueprint from you, because to have a 90%.
And you know what the problem is? Here's the interesting thing. So 4 years ago, they lost all their federal funding because the federal government and HUD went away from that model, that transitional housing model, the long-term perspective, and they wanted to just help day to day, right? It's more. They felt like it was more important to help today,
right?
And to provide a bed and a meal today. And so we had to take over. They lost $2 million of federal funding overnight. Like, they get a call like, hey, you don't have your funding anymore. And by the way, it's retroactive the last month. So they were going to have to kick all these families in the middle of summer in Arizona at 115 degrees. And like 50% of the women come from domestic violence.
Yeah.
So where do you want them to go? You want them to go back to where they just like free themselves from, and their kids. And so that's when my wife really got involved, and she became the president, and we took over the funding. So we raised, a couple $1 million a year now to fund it. And it's better because now that it's private, even though, it's a lot of work to raise all that money, but they can do a lot of things that they couldn't do when they were restricted by the federal government, and telling them what they can and can't do, and what drug tests they can and can't do because it's not right or humane or whatever. But that's what's going to get them out of the system. That's what's going to get them out of this cycle, and so it's frustrating when you do run into that, and that's what happens with government programs.
And so real quick before we transition, what's the name of the program again, Jay? So we'll put the link up and get that pushed out.
House of Refuge, REFUGE.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
Yeah,
great.
You can look it up online. House of Refuge in Mesa, Arizona.
Perfect. Okay, Sterling, you're up, brother.
All right, we're going to do 5 solid minutes with Jay Feely on the NFL playoffs. You were in the house on Sunday in Kansas City. Just the environment there when it was 24-0 Houston, this special teams blitzkrieg takes place in the first quarter. What was the Kansas City sideline like during that time? Because it didn't appear that there was any give up to the guys in red.
No, it was fascinating. I mean, you had a lot of boos going on in that stadium, and they were quickly losing that crowd. And the guy I give so much credit to is Patrick Mahomes. He's just an unbelievable player, but he's an unbelievable leader, Mike. Yeah. And he wasn't yelling and screaming at his guys on the sidelines. He wasn't getting up in guys' faces. He just had a confidence to him. And he was going up to guys. Just watch him go up to every guy. Hey, we got this. We're fine. Don't lose. We just got to do exactly what we know we can do, one play at a time. Make a special play. Go out there and be special and start making the plays that we know we can make. They're dropping balls, and then they get the punt blocked, and it was one thing after another. All of a sudden, you blink and you're down 24-0. To have the fortitude to be able to come back from that, to go out there and to make plays and to score 41 unanswered points is just unbelievable. But it brings me back to the AFC Championship last year because I was there, at Arrowhead. They're getting ready to play Tom Brady and the Patriots, right? Bill Belichick and everything, the mystique that goes along with the Patriots. And I'm sitting out there a couple hours, 3 hours before the game starts, and the fullback for the Chiefs, a guy named Anthony Sherman, who started his career in Arizona. I was there, and he roomed with me in training camp his first 2 years, so I got to know Anthony really well.
We've had Sherman on. We've had Sherman. Sherman and I are good friends too.
He's a piece of work. Yeah. So I'm sitting there talking to Sherman on the bench, and Patrick Mahomes comes out, and he's basically a rookie. He did one game as his rookie year, started one game. I actually called that game up in the booth against the Broncos. And then he's starting that year, and he's getting ready for his first AFC Championship, the biggest game in his career, against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And he sits down with us. He couldn't have been more calm and relaxed. He's telling stories about when he was a kid and all this stuff that literally have nothing to do with football. And I walked away, and I was like, this kid is going to be one of the all-time greats. Because it wasn't like a guy who wasn't focused, who didn't care about the game. It wasn't that at all. It was a guy who was completely confident in himself and comfortable in himself and comfortable in the moment. So when I saw him on the sidelines this last Sunday, willing his team back, instilling confidence in them without screaming and yelling and doing all this stuff and making guys nervous, I just knew that they had the ability to come back. I didn't know they're going to come back, but I knew that they had the ability. And it doesn't surprise me one bit with Patrick Mahomes because now I think the world of this kid. I think he's going to be one of the all-time greats if he stays healthy and continues to go. And they have so many weapons on that team.
Well, it's funny. I think Bill O'Brien said it after the game, something like that. They asked him, did you think your lead was safe? And he says, I don't think any lead is safe against the Chiefs.
He said we had to score 50. You really need to score 52.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, talk about, again, I just want to focus in on his demeanor because you're not only were you an incredible kicker, but you're also an incredible golfer. And I think there's some parallels between the quarterback position, the kicker position, and golf in the sense that you need to have that frame of mind if you're going to be great. Like you need to have this just almost stoic mindset where it's like no highs, no lows. We're just gonna do this, right? And that is the defining factor of Patrick Mahomes. Is obviously he has the tools, but the mental game, right? I mean, how important is that?
It's certainly different than an offensive or defensive lineman, where you make a mistake and you respond by you can get enraged, right? You come out there and you can just get angry and like come off and try and take out all your aggression on the guy in front of you, and whereas a quarterback, like, you have to still be able to understand the game plan, understand what the defense is trying to do, and be able to diagnose what they're trying to do. And, okay, they're staying in man. Okay, I'm going to continue to go to Travis Kelce because he's going to be one-on-one, and that's where my matchup's going to be. And just being able to kind of understand all that while exhibit and exude confidence to your teammates because they're all looking at you. And he does such a great job with that. And I think the thing that stuck out to me, my very first meeting with Andy Reid talking about Patrick Mahomes. So his first game as a starter, Alex Smith was a starter. They didn't have to win in week 17, so they start Patrick Mahomes against the Denver Broncos. And so I'm doing the production meeting with Andy Reid, and we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know a lot about him. I knew that people liked him, and I knew what he did at Texas Tech, but, I didn't know a lot about him. Andy Reid said he has a photographic memory. I said, is that right? He goes, I can tell him something one time in training camp, and he'll remember that and remember what I said. He'll remember the play. He'll be able to have that recall. And he goes, that's what makes him so good. And then you fast forward and you see what he does in his first year as a starter, because of the arm talent and the skill and the athleticism he has. And then you couple that with this photographic memory, and you see why he was able to be so good so quick. Because, and I don't think a lot of people know how smart he is and how football smart he is. This is a guy who picks up his systems and Andy Reid systems, asks a lot of the quarterbacks and understanding defenses and understanding what they're doing and being able to check at the line and being able to, have so many different crossing routes, and it's just chaos in their offense. And he knows exactly how to diagnose it. He knows exactly what receiver to go to at the right time, and he's just a special, special quarterback.
They'll welcome in the Tennessee Titans this weekend. And Jay, the thing I'm fascinated about, and all the numbers don't even do this justice, the Titans aren't kicking the football. They're not kicking field goals. Their percentage is something like 44% on the season.
The worst percentage since like 1987.
And their quarterback is throwing for 80 yards a game. He hasn't broke 200 in 2 playoff wins. How does this even happen? How do they make the AFC Championship with stats like this? But here they are.
their kicker going into this game on Sunday has not attempted a field goal for them this year.
And he's still getting paid.
He's getting paid. It's a great job. I mean, hey, I could have done that. I could have come out there and just kicked extra points. They could have just signed me. That would have been great.
You had to be waiting. You thought maybe you'd get a text. I mean, where they are right now.
Mike, I could have got another year, all of our benefits.
All the benefits. That's right. And when you play as many years as you do, every other benefit's like an extra $1 million because you've played for so long.
Yeah, I'd play for free. Just give me another year of benefits.
That's
That'd
right.
Be great.
Morton Anderson was in the parking lot.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a credit to Vrabel, obviously, and what he's built there and what he's instilled. He's instilled a toughness and a physicality, and that's who he was. He was one of those guys that wasn't highly thought of and was going to have to work his way into greatness, in which he did, and to be a leader. And he's got a great presence. He always did. I used to go to the NFLPA meetings, and he was on the executive board with me, and he was just one of those guys that when he talked, everybody shut up and they listened. And you're talking about NFL players who have accomplished so much. When Mike Vrabel talks, everybody's going to listen. And that's how he is as a head coach. Like, he has those guys. They're going to listen to him. He has the ability to connect with them. As a player, he's young enough that, they still have that feeling of camaraderie with him, while also being able to demand, and be authoritative when he has to, and have command of that locker room. And then you got a guy in Derrick Henry who is just an absolute beast. A guy who can run a 4.40 but can run you over as well. And you stand next to him and you're just stunned at how big he is. And he's got lateral quickness too, which is just shocking, Mike. Like, think about trying to go up against this dude, who's so big, and you got to come and you got to hit him with everything you got, and you got to have leverage when you hit him. And yet he's got the ability and the lateral quickness to sidestep you, and then the explosiveness to get to that second level. It's just such a rare combination of what he has. And, it's going to be a tough game for them because they're going to have to keep up with this Kansas City offense and the weapons they have. And they did it. They went in, they beat them earlier in the season. They blocked a field goal on the last play of the game when Kansas City was trying to tie it. So they have that confidence there, to be able to go in and beat them. But I think they have to do everything right. They got to get turnovers. They have to possess the ball and keep it away from Patrick Mahomes in that offense. And they got to score in the red zone when they get the opportunity, which is something since Tannehill took over that they've been better than anybody in the NFL.
Jay, it has been an absolute honor to have you on. I just want to finish up with one more question. Looking at the NFC, Green Bay, the 49ers, just a quick prediction there. What are you thinking? I know you can't comment on the one you're calling this weekend, but on the other game, what are you thinking?
I think Kyle Shanahan has done such an amazing job with that offense of, putting a defense in a quandary and show them basically the same play every time. His run game is as dynamic as any pass game in the NFL. So they do such a good job. And then, when you have a defensive line that can get after the quarterback and they get pressure without blitzing, that's such an advantage for a team. And, when you put 3-4 first-round picks into that defensive line and you go 7-8 deep on a defensive line like the 49ers do, that allows you to be fresh. Mike, you know this better than anybody. Yeah. It allows you to get after the quarterback, and you don't have to pressure, so you can have those 7 guys in that secondary, and you can do so much with that. And so, I think they have a combination of offense and defense, and I think they're going to end up winning that game.
Jay, Tom Brady as well as anybody. This is going to be the story of the offseason. We'll leave with this one. How do you see, we're before the AFC Championship, so there's a lot of game to be played this offseason. How do you think it plays out in New England?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I know he loves New England and loves his time there and respects everything. And I also know he wants to keep playing. And, I could see him going somewhere else and playing somewhere else for sure. As crazy as that is, and I never thought I'd say that. I never thought I'd see him in another uniform, but I could see that. And I could see him continuing to play. The one thing I can't see him doing is retiring right now. I think Tom Brady will be on the field next year. He's not done playing. And where that is going to be fascinating. I don't think we've ever had a free agency period since 1993 when Reggie White became a free agent and the players won free agency. We haven't had a free agency period like this since then. You look and you say Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady, Bridgewater, Jameis Winston, Tannehill, and no one's even talking about Eli Manning. He's won 2 Super Bowls, and if he continues to play, he goes somewhere else. That's an afterthought. I was watching one of the shows this morning. They went through all the quarterbacks. Eli Manning wasn't even listed on there. I mean, it's so crazy. What we've never seen this, because quarterbacks never get to free agency, and yet you have 2 of the all-time greats in Breeze and Tom Brady, and then you got another excellent quarterback in Phillip Rivers. You got a 2-time Super Bowl champion quarterback in Eli Manning. You got a young guy in Tannehill that's led his team to the AFC Championship. And you got another guy in Jameis Winston who became the first 30-30 guy in NFL history. So, I mean, it's going to be fascinating.
He's at Jay Feely on Twitter. Jay, good luck this weekend, and hopefully we'll catch up with you this offseason.
Great to talk to you guys. Mike, it's an honor, bud.